Hey everybody, this is Billy from Perma Pastures Farm, and once again I'm coming to you from work. But folks, I'm over here thinking, as I'm about ready to get to the chores around here, I thought, man, it might be pretty beneficial to cover a video. If anybody out there is thinking about doing this, which no doubt there is, I'm going to point out some things that you might want to consider that maybe I didn't even consider all this before doing it, even though I have a pretty good understanding of how to make it all work. So we're going to cover some of those today. And some of the things I think you ought to consider if you consider doing anything like this at work, or maybe it's a school, or maybe it's some public place that you've gotten permission to do things with. We'll cover those. I'm going to go through them in great detail. Right from the beginning, you got to ask yourself, do I even have time? I mean, folks, guess what? These guys have to be fed. There's no getting around that if you're going to even be slightly responsible. You know what else? They got to have, when you farm the way we do, these guys can't just sit in one spot. They have to constantly move. And folks, things you don't see on this camera is all the work that goes on behind the scenes. Now, as I stated before, this is work I thoroughly enjoy. Think about how many jobs you would love to do after having worked Sunday, which today is, Sunday, and then having to spend a little bit of time after work. For me, it's the best time of my day, but you got to factor that in. Do you have time to deal with it if you have animals in your system? Through my grazer's eye, I know that I could probably run on just the green areas around this shop I'm standing on. I know that I could probably run 2 sheep all year long just in hitting the green spots around here, the green space. I could do that, but do I have time to do it? Some days I'm working, I'm working 7 days a week right now, but some days I'm working 10 and 12-hour days. Do I have time? Do I have time at the end of a day at a time of year when there's not a whole lot of sunlight left over? But anyway, do you have time to properly care for the animals, if you have them, and for the plants that you have in this system? Okay, folks, next thing to consider, I think, is availability. Do you have any land available to you? If, like I said, you could start as simple as a balcony at an apartment, or pots, anything you have available to you. But if you're looking to do it at work, do you have any green space you can work with? Now, behind me, you'll see mostly concrete. In fact, as I kind of pan around here, you see almost all concrete. Most of it is going to be covered by the building. But you have numerous spots in between these what will be bay doors. You have numerous spots where you have at least a little bit of ground. I mean, it's not a whole lot, but you know what? I could easily graze 2, maybe even 3 sheep in this area for a day, maybe even 2. I could also do a number of things. I could put an orchard in here, maybe vegetable boxes. A little development happened the other day, and it turned out I was going into the shop where I normally work, but I went in there to drop something off to the guy that runs one of the shops. And it just so happens my boss's 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 boss, the guy who essentially reluctantly gave me permission to do what I did on the other site, he's in there, and I was shocked because he was openly musing about putting fruit trees, and I think it was like a hint, hey Billy, he was openly musing about putting fruit trees. In fact, to be honest with you, I mean, the fact that he even said okay is pretty groundbreaking to begin with. But I know he did it with a great deal of reluctance. And honestly, in his own words, he says, frankly, I think it's just going to be funny. I mean, what, he thought I'm a comedian? That I wasn't serious? Well, he wasn't laughing when those chickens showed up on the job, I can tell you that. So I think they knew I was serious. In fact, that, I think, was the demarcation point where they realized, you know what? This guy isn't just talking, man. He's going to come out here and do this stuff. But folks, availability, even though I have this ground available to me, I'm not so sure I have the time. Like I said, I'm working 7 days a week sometimes. And right now I'm in the building phase of what's going on over here. I have 3 swales total. And I'm like, okay, even though I have this available to me, can I do it? Maybe it's something I want to farm out to one of my worthy lieutenants. Even though you have all of these, let's say you have a ton of green spaces like this place in between the shops, as you can see behind me. that is a massive space I could potentially have to work with. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you just what I could do in a space like this. Remember, we start small. Start with our zones closest to us. One of the next things to consider, I think, is knowledge. You know, one of my heroes in this space, Joel Salatin, once said, if it's worth doing, then it's worth doing poorly at first. Now, for me, that was one of the most life-changing things I've ever heard in my life, because it gave me license to fail, but not intentionally. So if you don't have the knowledge, if there are things in your wheelhouse you don't have, folks, are pretty darn available. I mean, you have the benefit of the internet. You know, that can be as George Washington said, a dangerous servant or a fearful master, depending on how you use it. But you got videos like what I'm doing here, folks. These are things that you can do. So you go out and acquire the best knowledge you can, and if you don't have that, acquire it. If you do, expand it, and seek it from multiple sources. Don't just accept it from me or anybody else. Have it corroborated, but go out there and do it. Do you know how many times Michelle and I and William have done swales before we finally came to a methodology that works for us? It took a lot of failure, but folks, part of what I'm doing with these videos, remember, is to try to remove as best I can some of those things, the easy things that you don't have to fail at. But acquire that knowledge. By all means, if you love to read, get it. Read everything you possibly can. In addition to that, seek an apprenticeship. Folks, I'm a journeyman electrician. I've been doing this trade for well over 2 decades. And I didn't just start. They didn't say, hey, here's some conduit, bend it. I went through a 5-year apprenticeship to learn how to do this through the IBEW. And folks, I think it is without a doubt the best way to learn. If somebody around you is doing what you want to do, I think one of the most effective ways, in fact, all the way back through antiquity, one of the best ways to learn was through apprenticeship. It wasn't just reading books or watching videos. And believe me, folks, a lot of people that have this knowledge are so glad to have other people in the space that show interest in it. So they're more than willing to teach you. Okay, next on the list is infrastructure. This is almost embarrassing when I stop to think about it. I'm a journeyman electrician, like I said earlier. And before I started this, it didn't even occur to me that there is no water and no power on the side of this building. Well, for me, installing power is what I do for a living, so I put in this little receptacle down here. I got it done at lunch one day and decided, okay, yeah, I'll just go ahead and get this thing over with. But here's the problem. Despite all the planning and everything I thought I did, I had the chickens about ready to, I literally was putting the chickens outside that day. So, that totally slipped my mind. Something that should have been absolutely obvious from the word go. And then the deal with the water, I thought it would work out a little better for me because we do have water in this building. The access to it wasn't as easy as I'd liked. In fact, I had a little thing worked out with a plumber when they were doing this little expansion job back there, that he would hook me up with some means of plumbing outside here. Well, he definitely crawfished on that one. But in terms of infrastructure, folks, you're also going to need, these birds, you can't, unless you have a very unique job site, they're not going to be cool with you just letting them run everywhere. And frankly, I don't think it's the best way in the world to raise chickens anyway. So you're going to need a net, an electro net. You're going to need a way to power it. I just showed you that. In addition to that, these guys are going to need a place to sleep at night or you won't have any chickens. Even I missed some things, folks, so you're going to miss some things too. But like I said, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly at first. Anyway, the next thing on the list, folks, is carrying capacity. Now, that's something you definitely want to know about and if you're going to have any animals involved in this thing. And like I said, this isn't my first rodeo, so I have a pretty good understanding about, how much area I do need. If anything, folks, go small. I know that in this area in particular, all the areas I have available to me around here, I knew that I could run about 30 chickens, keep them moving, and not play any area out. The number of birds I have in here right now are 17. And you got a little bit of everything there. And like I said, in permaculture, we don't want a monocrop, so I don't just have one kind of bird if I can help it. There's 4 different types in here. Anyway, in terms of carrying capacity, Like I said, I know that within the area around this building, I could easily run a couple of sheep. I could easily run 30 birds. I'm down to 17, as I stated a moment ago. But that's something you definitely want to know, because if you wind up with too many animals in too small a place, you got a problem. Methodology. That's kind of important. You want to know exactly what kind of method you're going to go about using and employing when you do some of this stuff. For example, the chickens back there, there's a variety of methods in which you can raise chickens as far as layers go, and even with broilers. But one method we've chosen, or at least at the farm, the chicken tractor on steroids, Jeff Lawton's chicken tractor on steroids. And it works beautifully. In fact, we've had as many as 3 different chicken tractors with 30 birds apiece going at one time. And we've done it a variety of different ways. Think about the method on that. Even in terms of these swales, there is no shortage of people and methodologies in which to employ. Now, you can do like us, where we employ everybody from Jeff Lawton, Mark Shepard. I mean, I don't want to say them all because I'd leave some out, where it's an amalgamation of numerous techniques. So choose a method that works for you, and one that is also elegant. I've found out in my regular work and everything I've done, it seems to me that the most efficient way to do everything is the elegant way. And when I say elegant, I mean concise and simple, admirably succinct, I believe is what the textbook definition of it is. Okay, what's your end game? Where's the finish line? What will you call completed? For me, on this particular project, it means that all of the swales in the background, they're completely planted the way I want. Maybe we keep the chickens, maybe we phase them out, I don't know. Does it make sense in the future? But I do have a finish line. My finish line is basically getting those swales planted. But find out where the finish line is for you folks. I mean, it could be like some of these folks that it can be a constantly evolving thing, as a garden and orchard should be. Those things should be. But hey, when do you intend to take a break? When are you going to say, hey, okay, I've arrived on this one? So anyway, folks, those are just a few things to, if anybody's thinking about doing this sort of thing, and I hope you are, just some things to really consider. You're also going to have those people out there, the detractors. There was one guy in particular, when I'm out here, he would kind of mess with me a little bit, and I said, well, hey bro, why don't you come over here and help me out? And so he was content to be a critic. So finally I told him, look, man, get loose or get lost. I mean, so he got lost. Permanently, actually, from this particular place. But you're going to deal with those people. You're always going to have those ones that are encouragement, and people that are really kind of blown away, because these are pretty innovative things that you're doing here. These are not things that everybody does every day, and certainly not on a job site or a work site or any place you may be. So good luck in all this stuff, folks. I mean, if there's anything I can do, just ask in the show note or ask in the questions down below, and we'll address it. And I hope some folks are considering doing this sort of thing. So if you like this sort of thing, folks, just hit the subscribe button down below. Tell your friends about us. And this is the Permaculture Pimp Daddy from Perma Pastures Farm, and we'll see you next time.